allocution. It would not include any factual things for which he would be subject to cross. So he recognizes that for the stage that we're at right now, he would be subject to cross-examination.
And Mr. McEnroe, do you want any additional time to chat with your attorneys about this, or do you believe you fully understand the circumstances?
I understand.
You understand?
I understand.
Okay, and then you'll be subject to cross-examination on everything that you testified to in this portion of the proceeding?
I'm aware of this, yes.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, then I think we're ready for the jury. So Kenya, if you'd invite them in, please.
Please rise for the jury.
And good morning, folks. Please be seated. Welcome back. And Mr. O'Toole, I believe you had indicated on Tuesday afternoon that you had called all the witnesses you had intended to call in your case in chief. Is that correct?
I hope I indicated that on Tuesday that we intended to call all 7 witnesses that we intended to call, and it was our intention to arrest.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. That concludes the presentation of the state's case in chief. And Mr. Presti, do you wish to call any witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Joseph McEnroe.
All right, Mr. McEnroe, if I could ask you to step forward, sir. You could step up here and raise your right hand. I'll swear you in and we'll get started. You swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Thank you. Please have a seat.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You can point the microphone, just point right up at your mouth. I
Yeah.
think that's going to work good.
Yeah, okay. How's that?
That's good. Could you state your name, please, and spell it for the record?
Joseph McEnroe, M-C-E.
It's going to
Yeah.
pick up noise from that.
Okay.
Mr. McEnroe, where do you live?
I live at 505th Avenue, Seattle, Washington, 98104.
And what is that facility you live in?
That is the King County Correctional Facility. That is the King County Jail.
Why are you there?
For the morals of 6 people.
And are you guilty of that? Is there any question that you are guilty of those murders?
There is no question of that. I did do this awful thing, yes.
Okay. I want to ask you first, very generally, why did you do that?
Mr. McEnroe, if I could ask you to push
sorry.
the microphone a little bit further away from you.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank
Okay,
you.
sorry about that.
Go ahead, sir.
Sorry, I'm not very good at public speaking. The reason is I thought I had to.
Why didn't you just leave? Why didn't you? I mean,
I would have. If it was left to me, I absolutely would have. I wanted to just leave. I mean, I'm not a confrontational person. I don't like hurting people or fighting or even arguing. I just don't. And I would have, if it had been up to me, I would have just left.
you don't like hurting people, but you killed or helped kill 6 people, right?
Yeah, I did. I didn't want to, but I did. Because I thought I had to.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh for
I'm sorry, I did because I thought I had to. And yeah, I know that's not a very good excuse, but I'm not trying to excuse myself. I'm just trying to explain my actions. Sorry.
Let's take it back for a minute here, Joe.
Okay.
You did this with Michelle Anderson, is that right?
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us, how did you meet Michelle?
I met her online. We were part of a writing group, and yeah, you know more about this than I do. You seem to have more experience with it than I do. We were part of a writing group. This is back before stuff like EverQuest and other graphic online adventures type games existed, at least that I knew of. And so what I had done for quite some time is I would write little fantasy stories online with a group of other writers. And this actually was about the extent of my social life, but I mean, it wasn't a bad social life. We would come up with little stories, and like one guy would come up with a basic plot and write up, okay, so this is the basic plot, and this is the starting scene and whatnot. And
I
then
didn't hear this is
the basic plot and the starting scene and whatnot. And then somebody else reads that, it's like, okay, well that sounds interesting. Contacts the person who's writing and asks, hey, can I go and join in on this and become part of this storyline, because it seems like it'll go some interesting places, or I like the way that you write, or whatever, or I think I can contribute to something interesting to the story. And then they, just join the story. It's not something that, the way that it was set up on the AOL message boards, you could just basically latch into a story if you wanted to, but, just courtesy, you would ask before you would go and just join into somebody's story, because that's, rude.
Okay, so Joe, when was this that you met Michelle?
I met her in, I'd say, 2001, 2, 3 at the latest. I don't know, very early in the teens.
In the teens?
Aughts.
The aughts?
Like whatever.
After the year 2000?
After the year 2000.
Joe, where were you living at the time?
I was living at the time in North Carolina.
What
Fayetteville. Fayetteville.
Fayetteville, North
Yeah,
Carolina.
North Carolina. Beautiful place. If you get a chance to go there,
Okay.
you really should. It's very wet though.
Okay. Now, tell us, you met Michelle in this online group, is that right?
Yes, we were both part of this online group. I'd actually been because this was one of my it was basically a meritocracy, where the more effort that you meritocracy, yes, where it was based off of how many characters you had playing and being involved in the storylines and how good of stories you come up with and stuff like that, right? So somebody who spends a lot of time on there and doing a lot of stories and coming up with a lot of good writing would be considered relatively high rank, though basically everybody was equal in all reality.
Okay. Was this a written system of...
Yes.
It was a written system?
Yes.
Okay. And did you spend a lot of time on this what would you call it, a chat room?
I'd actually like to note that one of the reasons that it's important that it was a written system, and this is why I spent so much time on it and writing though, is because I don't know if you guys can tell, but I have a terrible voice. And like when we had my confession on the overhead or whatever, I don't know about you guys, but I was struck by how just awful my voice was. And let's know these are not very confrontational. I mean, how are you supposed to get into an argument with somebody when, how are you supposed to make points when your voice sounds like this? I mean,
so
really? So being able to just write instead was a hugely liberating experience. Here's a bunch of people who didn't have to know me by my voice. Here's a bunch of people who, okay, I could just, you know, my
Joe, let me interrupt you for a second.
physical
You
awkwardness.
have a bit of a speech impediment, is that right?
A bit of a speech impediment, yes, and I'm very shy in general anyway, and I tend to speak quickly and softly when I'm a novice. I don't do that quite as much anymore because I
didn't hear you.
I don't do that quite as much anymore because I've really practiced on my speech pad, on refining my speech patterns and whatnot over the past several years.
Let me interrupt you for a second, Joe. This speech impediment, how do you refer to it when you're talking about?
Usually I say that I have trouble pronouncing the R sound. Not all R sounds, just the AR sound. The reason is that there's a little, I don't know exactly what the tone is, but there's a little, you know that tendon right underneath your tongue, attaching your tongue to the lower palate? Mine actually comes out a little bit further than usual, and so it makes it difficult for the tongue to drop back all the way. So it makes it more of a L sound than an R sound.
Okay. Have you ever used the term accent when referring to it?
Usually refer to it as an accent.
An accent, but it's not an accent on English.
It's not actually an accent because I'm from California.
Okay.
People in California would ask me what my accent's from. It's like, they're like, where are you from? From California.
From where?
California.
Okay.
So, people
So
from
you
California
met Michelle
don't talk like this.
I'm sorry?
People from California don't actually talk like this.
Okay. So you met Michelle in this online gaming group, is that right? You have to answer that.
Yes, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Did I just
It's
go
fine.
again?
No problem.
Yeah, like I was saying, I was one of the people who had been there longer and more active, and she was somebody who was more of an outlier, right? And so I saw her online. I'm like, okay, well, let's go make her feel welcome. So I went off, sent her a message, and hi, how's it going?
Okay, well, let me ask you this. You were living in Fayetteville, North Carolina,
Yes.
right? And you decided to, I guess, eventually move out here to be with Michelle, is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was my second
Had you
mistake.
made other friends like this online prior to Michelle?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you just tell us how some of those friendships came around and who they were?
I had, as I said, this was most of my social life involved meeting people online like this. For example, my best friend, Amber, I met her through a friend who...
Joe, I'm sorry, her name is
Amber?
Amber? Is
Yeah.
this the one who has a difficult last name to pronounce?
Fladerall? Yes.
Fladerer. That's
Yes.
P-F-L-E-I-D-E-R-E-R?
Liedero.
Okay. So she was your best friend?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say that.
What's that?
I would say that, yeah.
Okay.
I'd also met, a number of friends in the same group as Amber. Jolene, Tanya, a number of people I
Who was the one who
can't
ran
remember.
that writing group that you met?
There were actually, this was actually two different writing groups.
Okay.
Michelle was not in the same writing group as Amber.
Michelle was not in the same writing group as Amber?
No, these were two different writing groups. The other writing group that Michelle was a part of was actually run de facto by a woman named Griselle.
Griselle?
Yeah.
G-R-I-Z-E-L-L-E?
E-L-L. Yeah, I think that's correct.
Did you ever meet Griselle in person?
I did not.
What town did she live in?
She actually lived up in D.C.
Washington, D.C.?
I was going to at one point, but it seemed like a bad idea because, I don't know, it just seemed like a bad idea, despite the fact that I lived right in North Carolina. I mean, right a couple hours away, it just seemed like, I don't know.
So did you let me ask you this. Did you become close or very friendly with any people other than Amber and Michelle as a result of this writing group?
Yeah.
Who would that be?
As a result of that particular writing group?
In general, the writing groups that you were involved in.
I've actually met a couple of people from these writing groups. One was a guy who actually might have been named Nathan, kind of think of it, who was somebody when I had went out to North Carolina. He's like, oh yeah, don't worry, you can just hang out over at my place, no big deal. So I end up going over there, and so I take the bus over there.
Let me interrupt you for a second here, Joe.
It doesn't really matter, I guess,
You took
right?
the bus over to North Carolina from where?
Arizona.
From Arizona. Who were you living with in Arizona?
Right. Yeah, Arizona.
Who were you living with in Arizona?
I was living with my mom in Arizona and my 3 siblings and my mom, her husband, and my 3 siblings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's do this, Joe. Let's take it back to the beginning. Let's talk about your early life, and we're going to come on up, and we're going to get to how you got to Carnation.
Okay.
On Christmas Eve in 2007.
Okay. Can I know the other 2 people that I met online, though, first?
What was that?
Those 2 other people that I met from online.
I tell you what, Joe, we'll come back to that, okay?
Okay.
I'll write it down.
Okay.
Tell us, where were you born, and when were you born?
I was born in San Jose Valley Medical Center on October 29th, 1978. So.
Okay. And your mother is who?
My mother, she was Sean McEnroe. Now she calls herself Sean Johnson.
Okay, is that because she married somebody?
Yeah, because she married Al Johnson.
Al
Worked out well.
I didn't hear the name. She married who?
Al Johnson.
Thank you.
Yeah. That worked out well.
And what?
That worked out well.
Are you being serious or are you being facetious? Just an answer, serious or facetious?
Can I ask what the answer was? I couldn't hear.
He said
that worked out well.
That worked out.
Yes.
Yeah. That was ironic, I guess, because it did not, actually.
Okay, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Let's start at the beginning so we can go forward and rather than jumping around.
Okay.
Your mother's Sean McEnroe. You were born in 1978.
Okay.
Who's your dad?
As far as I know, it was a guy named Amory Fryle.
Guy named Avery?
Amory. AMORYFRIAL. And, as I say, as far as I know, I never actually met the guy, and if it is him, he's dead now. I saw a picture of him, and I saw a picture of his son, and his son looks quite a bit like me.
Okay. Did you ever meet him?
Absolutely not, no.
Okay. Who were you living with when you were born, or who did your mom live with your first few years?
My mom lived with my grandfather and my grandmother for a while. So.
And is that the first house you remember living in?
Yes.
And what city is that in?
That's in Santa Clara.
Santa Clara, California?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody live there other than you and your mom and your grandma and grandpa?
No.
Okay.
No, just us.
Did you have any aunts or uncles?
I have a number of aunts and uncles. I only really know one of them, that is my Aunt Mary. And the others I haven't had much communication with, if at all.
Okay.
Any.
Do you know whether the others were around at all when you were very young, maybe when you were too young to remember them?
Not that I know of.
Okay. And how about cousins or anything that were close in age to you that you remember from your very early days?
From that time frame, no, not really.
Okay. Well, how old were you? How long did you live with your grandma and grandpa until you were how old?
I'd say we lived there until I was about, I don't know, 6 or 7. By then I had my oldest younger brother who had been born, Chris.
Okay. That's your brother Chris?
Yes.
And what year was he born?
1980, no, I can't remember. I think it was 82.
Okay, so
Yeah, it was 82.
what? roughly 3 or 4 years
About
younger than
three and a
you?
half years younger.
Hold on. I need a complete question and complete answer. I didn't hear your question.
I said he's about 3 or 4 years younger than you.
About 3.5.
Okay.
Sorry.
And you remember when he came around? Is that right?
I don't remember when he was born or anything, but I remember that by the time we left, he was a couple years old.
Okay. Do you have any memories of what life was like, what conditions were like, or what life was like with when you lived in your grandpa's house?
No, actually I don't.
Okay.
I would like to note, however, that by the time we left, not only had we added Chris, but my grandmother was dead by then.
Okay.
So,
Fair enough.
yeah.
And when you, well, let me just getting ahead of ourselves without getting into any detail. Did you continue to have a relationship with your grandpa as you grew up?
For a while,
Okay.
yeah. Till
What-
about the end of middle school,
Till about the end of middle school.
yes.
And did you, what kinds of things did you do with your grandpa?
You know, not much. I mean, we just go over there and just be there, I guess. He had this thing, he would restore toy soldiers, lead figurines, paint them and whatnot. He had this room, this workshop full of them.
Joe, just try to keep your voice up a little bit,
Sorry.
please, okay?
Sorry, kind of soft-spoken. He had this room, this workshop that was just full of them.
Did you say
Sorry.
a workshop?
Yeah, that was full of all these little toy soldiers and knickknacks like that. We would go to flea markets and whatnot. He died of the cause of this. I mean,
died?
in the time that I've been here,
In jail, you mean?
he died.
Since the murders in Carnation, your grandpa passed away?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I haven't been able to write. Hadn't been able to write, so it doesn't.
I didn't hear you.
And I hadn't been able to write him or anything, so yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I'm not trying to be difficult.
Sorry, I've got soft voice and I get even softer when I'm.
So what was your answer to that question about your grandpa? I think Mr. O'Toole didn't hear the answer.
That I think the answer was that he died while I was here, and I wasn't able to even really write him and say, "Look, I'm sorry. Sorry about letting him down too, because
Okay.
it let me down."
So, I think you said you moved out of your grandpa's house when you were 6 or 7. Is that right?
Yeah, we moved to Colorado.
Do you remember? Well, let me back up for a second. Do you remember what your mom was doing during those first 6 or 7 years? Is Amory Fryer also your brother Chris's dad?
No,
Do you know who your brother Chris's dad is?
as far as I know, it's some guy named Richard Dutra.
Yep, it's somebody.
Richard Dutra, D-U-T-R-A, probably.
Do you remember Mr. Dutra?
No,
Okay.
I don't even know if I ever met the guy.
Okay. Do you remember, was your mom with anybody else over those early years that you remember?
I wouldn't know.
Okay. Why did you move to Colorado, and where did you move in Colorado?
Mom met some guy in Loveland, Colorado, and which is actually quite a bit above sea level. So we moved there, and it was the first time that I really experienced snow, and it was nice. He had
Hold on. It's the first time you really experienced
snow,
snow? Okay.
daylight snow. And he had a daughter and about my age, and we got along pretty well, and it's a nice place. He was a little, he had some problems. He was in a lot of constant pain, I guess. He'd had some kind of back injury that left him in a lot of pain and kind of irritable for that.
What
So-
was his name, if you remember?
Bob. I just know him as Bob.
I think Dr. Dutton said his name was Mark. Do you know if that's right or wrong?
I think, unfortunately, I think Dr. Dudding's memory might be a little hazy.
Okay.
Might be a little.
Hazy. Yeah, there's a couple things that he was a little hazy on.
Okay.
So,
Joe, let me ask you, first of all, how long did you live in Loveland?
a couple months, I think.
Okay.
Long enough for a Christmas.
And for what?
Christmas.
Okay. And
Irony.
a brief summary, if you would, please, of your memories of Loveland as far as what life was like there. Was it what happened there? If you have any specific memories, and why did you leave?
It, in general, it wasn't bad. I mean, like I said, me and his daughter got along really well, and we were like 7, 8 years old at the time, and girlfriend, and we got along pretty well, and we were all got along. Being redundant, sorry. He was prone to some violence, though. I mean, he tried to drown me in the bathtub, and he beat the crap out of Chris with a belt, and to give you some idea of where Mom's priorities lie, after he tried to go off and drown me in the tub, Mom's just like, whatever. After he beat the crap out of Chris with the belt...
Well, you're going to have to slow down. I didn't hear
Sorry.
you. After he tried to drown me in the tub.
After he tried to drown me in the tub, and I complained to Mom about that, she's just like, whatever. After he beat the crap out of Chris with the belt, we moved the next day.
Okay. And where did you go when you moved out of there?
We went back to grandfather's place.
Back to your grandfather's place?
Yeah.
So how was your relationship with your mom at this stage of your life, if you remember?
I don't really. I mean, I don't know if, I can't really say that I was that close to her, I guess. I don't know.
Well, during this era when you were first living with your grandpa and up until you moved out to Loveland, Colorado, do you remember any friends that you had or what kind of things you did?
I had a friend. I don't remember much about her now. I think her name was Jill or Jennifer.
Jennifer?
I think so. Jill or Jennifer, one of the two. And she lived down the street, and I would go over there and hang out with her, and, yeah.
And ask you just to keep your hand away from the front of your mouth.
No, I'm sorry, I wasn't actually saying anything.
I understand.
I was just thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you moved to Loveland, you were there a couple months, then you moved back to your grandpa's house. Is that right?
Yeah.
You're still roughly 6 or 7 years old?
I think by this point, I'm somewhere between 6 and 8, yeah.
Okay. So 8, you would have turned 8 in 1986?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Okay. And you moved back with your grandpa. How long did you live with him at that point?
Not very long.
And
Not
then,
really.
and where did you move to then?
One of the reasons that I don't think we lived there very long when we came back was by the time that we had come back, my mom had gotten grandfather with somebody else who didn't like me very much.
So let me just clarify. Your grandfather had somebody he was with now, or was your mom somehow
My
involved in that?
grandfather had somebody he was with now.
So,
That my...
we can't talk at the same time because
Sorry.
that makes it very difficult for the court
Sorry.
reporter. So I know it's sometimes my fault, and I'll accept that. But let's try not to talk over each other.
Okay, sorry.
So tell me about this situation. Who was your grandpa with at this point?
At this point, my grandfather had met somebody through the offices of my mom. Her name was Elva, and she had the interesting attribute of having the same birthday as me.
Having the same birthday as you?
Yes. And so I thought, hey, we should get along really well, right? I mean, we both really care about my grandfather, and we both had the same birthday, and I thought, hey, we're gonna get along. We should get along famously, right? We did. She apparently had a nephew named Joe. It's a relatively common name, I guess. And had some kind of a falling out with him. And communication with the whole family as a result of this falling out. So,
Okay, so Elva was there with your grandpa, but you didn't live there very long at that
so
point.
because to an extent she kind of took that out on me, how pulling that walked out. So,
How did she take it out on you, Joe?
by really kind of just pushing grandfather away from me, to put it in the simplest terms. I can't really be very specific.
She wasn't beating you or anything.
No, I can't say that at all.
Okay.
No, she was just not, she just made very clear that I wasn't welcome and she did not like me.
Okay. Did you
And
have
whatever.
any other, so at this point it's your mom and Chris and you, right? Is that right?
Yes.
Anybody else in your life as far as family, any cousins or any aunts come into the picture or anything like that?
At that point, no.
Let me ask you, who is Beth Keller?
She was my babysitter at that point.
Are you related to her?
I had forgotten about this, but recently found out that apparently I was. I never realized this until a couple years ago, actually.
And when you
Since-
say in here, you mean after
Since
after the incident and since you've been in
Yeah.
jail, right?
whenever I talk about in here or after the incident, in the last 7 months.
Okay. How are you related to Beth Keller?
Apparently I'm her cousin.
You know who her mother is?
Not a clue.
But somehow related.
Yes.
And do you remember what kind of relationship you had with Beth Keller or any details about that?
She was great. She was my babysitter, and I thought she was fantastic.
Okay. Now, how about your mom? What are you doing? What's your relationship with your mom like around the time when you were moving out of Grandpa and Elva's house? And where did you move to? And what was your relationship with your mom like?
This is about when Beth came in. We had moved to this pink stucco apartment place.
In what town, Joe?
Just down the street.
Still in Santa Clara?
Still in Santa Clara, just down the street from where I was. My relationship with Beth was kind of like what most people would go and assume that one's relationship with a mom would be like, I guess.
That one's relationship
With their mother would be like.
Explain that if you would, please.
She was very caring, very supportive, very nurturing. She was, like I said, the things that one would usually associate with, the thoughts of one's mom. Instead I had that with Miss Helen.
Okay. Well, what about your mother here? I mean, she's still around. She hasn't left you. What was your relationship like with her, if you remember?
I don't actually.
You don't actually?
To be completely honest, I really don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
You moved down the street to this pink stucco apartment place. Is that right?
Hmm?
And so by this point, it's mid to late 80s, right? 1980s?
I suppose so, yes.
Okay. And what other significant people do you remember in your life at that time? What other significant events, if anything?
Not but,
Where'd you go to school?
I went, let's see, we're going to get into school. We had actually moved, I think I went back to the same school that I had started off at, which is just an elementary school.
You don't remember the name of it?
C.W. Heyman, if that matters.
Heyman?
Heyman, H-A-M-A-N.
Okay.
And before then, I had actually went to preschool, which was right across the street from my grandfather's house, and I'd also went to various Catholic Sunday school stuff, if that counts.
Were you Catholic when you were growing up?
Yeah, well, for a while when I was growing up.
Until about what age?
Until Mom decided we should be Baptist.
Until what?
Until Mom decided we should be Baptist,
Okay.
because they actually came out in a bus and gave me a ride to church. I don't remember what time that was.
You don't remember what time it was? Do you remember how old you were?
That's what I meant. Oh, sorry. I don't remember what time it was or what age it was. That's kind of what I meant. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Well, let's just talk about this for a second. What you said you were Catholic and then you became Baptists, and then were you involved in any other religions growing up?
Yeah.
Well, what were they?
Yeah, we were involved in a couple of different religions, actually. Pretty much, Mom was kind of always searching for truth, right? She's
That's
woman.
not surprising, is it?
Yeah, because the truth can be an elusive thing. So she had, apparently now she's a Mormon, which seems to be working out very well for her.
Okay.
And
Which
bound to-
what?
I'm sorry,
Mormon?
no, I can't understand this.
She seems to be a Mormon now, which seems to be working out pretty well for her. So,
Okay. So, but Joe, just
yeah.
tell us. I asked you what other
Yes.
religions you practiced growing up.
I don't remember the other religions I had practiced other than Baptist and Jehovah's Witness. I'd actually studied to be what's called a lay minister with the witnesses. That didn't actually work because
Well, why don't you tell us about about how old were you when you were studying to be a lay minister with the Jehovah's Witnesses?
I think about 13.
And how long were you with that group?
A couple of years. After that didn't work out, I basically left the church. That was the last.
Let me ask you this. Why didn't that work out? Tell us about that relationship and what it was
Okay.
like for you.
It was, the Witnesses are a very conservative sect. And
A very
conservative sect. No holidays, no rock music, no soap operas. This is fun to go off like say in front of a room full of people. No masturbation. It was being a teenage boy that was actually the one that I ended up breaking. And so when the elders asked if I had a clear conscience, I couldn't say that I did because
Because you'd been masturbating?
I am a wanker, yes.
because I'm.
A wanker. W-A-N-K-U.
But I can't.
Speak up again, sir, I'm sorry.
One second, Joe.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Somebody's got the rumba going. Sorry.
Just wait a second, Joe, please.
I was.
It's okay.
Sorry to draw attention to
It's
you
okay.
like that.
Just let the record reflect there was just a cell phone going off. No big deal. Just had to take a break for a minute.
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so you talked to the elders and the Jehovah's Witnesses
So
about...
one of the things that you do is you go through this couple of years of study, right? I actually went through it a little bit quicker than one usually would, I think. But you study the Bible and what it means and all this allegorical
Joe,
stuff.
you got to slow down a little and you got to keep your voice up, okay?
Sorry.
I understand.
Yeah.
But everybody's got to hear this, okay?
Yeah. I'm really helpful. It's a bunch of you study a bunch of allegory and what various things in the Bible mean and the books of the Bible and whatnot. So
You did this for a couple of years. Were you enjoying this?
I was very into it. This was really the center of my life.
Why did you like it so much?
I think because it gave me some sense of purpose, some sense of belonging, some sense of meaning. I mean, yeah, having a sense of belonging and meaning like that was really a sense of acceptance, you know?
So did you not have that before?
No?
You know, Dr. Dutton talked about the aspects of your childhood, and jury has heard us talk about it in the opening statements and about all these terrible things you experienced. I haven't heard about any of it yet. It doesn't sound that bad to me, to be honest with you, what you described so far. What was so bad, if anything, about your home life up to this point, when you were 13 or 14? What do you remember?
I can't sit here and say that. I don't like to complain about my problems or draw
You don't like to what?
I don't like to complain about my problems or draw attention to my problems. I don't know. I guess in all reality it wasn't. I don't know. It just. The main grief I had was just alienation, really.
Alienation from who?
Everybody.
Why were you alienated?
Because I was different.
Because you were different?
Look, when I was.
You gotta speak into the microphone.
Sorry.
All right.
When I
I'm
was
just
really.
gonna keep reminding you.
Okay. If you're gonna keep reminding me, I'm gonna be screwing up.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I believe he said if you're gonna keep reminding me, I'm gonna keep screwing up.
Sorry.
Let's keep going here.
Yeah. When I was very young, I had what's called idiopathic thrombopenia, ITP.
I didn't hear you. Idiopathic.
Thrombopenia. THROMBOPENIA.
Or for short, it's called
ITP,
ITP.
which is how I knew it for the longest time.
Hold on, I didn't catch it. It's what?
Which is how I knew it for the longest time, just
What?
by that ITP.
What is ITP?
That is, it's when the white blood cells consume the platelets. Now, the platelets are important in the clotting of blood, okay? The red blood cells release little thread-like proteins which catch on the platelets, which are shaped like little plates appropriately enough, and which causes them to bind together, which causes a clot.
So it's a blood problem?
It's a blood problem.
Okay.
So,
what?
and when, this occurred when I was 1 and then again when I was 2. So it's one of those, what this means is that because my blood vessels and whatnot weren't fully developed, I ended up becoming basically anemic because there wasn't enough platelets, so that anytime I got a bruise or anything else, I would just bleed and bleed and bleed.
So,
So,
but apparently you made it through, right?
both times. Apparently I was in a lot of pain both times.
About how old were you?
Once when I was 1, second time when I was 2.
Do you have a memory of this?
I do not have memory of this. I have memories, all my memories of this are from my mom. Her telling me that I had, that my arms and legs would swell up and discolor like sausages. I would scream in pain a lot enough to render more deaf in one ear, which she never really forgave me for and would always drag up on whatever.
Wait a second. She said you screamed so much that what happened?
That I ended up leaving deaf in one ear?
That you ended up being deaf in one ear?
No, that I ended up leaving her deaf in one ear.
They left her deaf in one ear.
Yeah. She didn't really appreciate that.
But she let you know that that's what happened?
Yeah. And also, now this goes back to weird thing is that one of the things that happened as a result of my screaming is I actually attracted crows. Attracted crows.
You attracted crows?
They would actually come and bang on my window.
Now, do you have a memory of that?
No, I do not.
You don't have a memory of
No.
that? Where did that...
Mom.
Your mom told you that?
Yes.
That crows would come and bang on your window?
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta make the jump here. We've heard all about your spirit guide. Crow.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what's the connection, if any?
Despite what we've seen on the screen, Crow is not, in fact, the ghost of Brandon Lee. Okay? And not, in fact, the ghost of Brandon Lee. Okay? He is, my earliest conception of him was as what one would consider a totemic spirit, that is like an animal spirit. what I would later perceive as a more person, who I also call a crow. I don't know if there was any relationship between the animal and the spirit animal and the spirit person, or if they're the same person, or if these are two different entities or what. I don't really know.
Well, when did you first come with this idea of crow? I'm not talking about the ones on the window pecking at the window, but this totemic
I don't know.
spirit. You don't know?
As far as the totemic thing, I don't really know. I think that was around 11-ish or so.
Well, what's your first memory, if you can? What's your first memory of this, and how did it affect you?
No, my first memory of the Paulson Pro was actually around 11. Okay?
Now, let's be clear. This person pro we're not talking about Brandon Lee.
No, I'm not talking about Brandon Lee. What I'm talking about is for one, his face paint is completely different. Okay? This is a guy who, as far as I know, actually lived previously. This seems really weird, but if you consider the idea of guardian angels and stuff.
Of what?
Guardian angels?
Of what, Joe?
Guardian angels.
Okay, sure.
That's
fine.
I just have to be able to go up and see and talk to my guardian angel. And I perceive him as being this guy who lived in maybe the last couple hundred years, who was Caucasian in background, who adopted native ways, who dressed
Who adopted?
Native American ways. A lot of people did this at those time, and who, who, there should be an add-on to this, but I don't know what.
There should be.
There should be an add-on to this, but I don't know what offhand.
There should be
I'm
a
sorry.
what?
Add-on.
An add-on.
He did this, and then there should be a thought item in a list to make it a list as opposed to just 2 items. And I can't think of what the thought item would be.
Okay, Joe,
Could you slow down?
you got to slow down and you got to speak into the microphone. Okay?
Sorry. No, I shouldn't.
No, just, it's okay.
Yeah. Sorry. No, he was some guy a Caucasian guy who adopted native ways and dress. And one of the items of that was, I guess, this thing of down his face.
You just made a gesture with your hands on your cheeks.
Yeah, so like these stripes down his face.
Stripes down his face.
Like this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have some kind of relation or memory of him when you were roughly 11, is that what you said?
Yeah.
And what is that memory?
Just physically seeing him?
Like in the same room with you?
Yes.
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 Because
That's one of the few times that I actually have. I don't see him or hear him or anything else like that in general. This one particular time I actually did happen to see him. He scared the
You
crap
what?
out of me. This one particular time, I did happen to see him. He scared the crap out of me.
And in what?
Scared the crap out of me.
Okay. Where were you, Joe?
Well, if you saw, some dude just show up in the middle of your freaking bedroom in the middle of the night, it's scared the crap out of you too, right?
Joe,
I'm sorry.
You got to repeat that. I'm sorry. You can't lie like that. Okay.
I'm sorry. Alright, terrible. If you had some dude just show up in your room in the middle of the night, that would probably concern you a little bit too, wouldn't it?
That would be what?
Be concerning.
Concerning to you. Okay.
Yeah.
So did this?
I'm so sorry, people.
So, is there any connection to? I mean, you heard this story from your mother about crows on the windowsill. Is there any connection to this
I
totemic
don't
animal?
know. No, there's a connection to the totemic animal?
Yes.
Yes.
What's the connection?
I don't know.
There is a connection, but you don't know what it is.
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a connection between that and this guy? I honestly don't know.
So you refer to the person crow, and then that's different than the spirit crow?
Yeah. Well, it might be different. I don't know. These are two
Okay.
different things.
So you saw this this guy, the person crow, when you were 11? When did you first have communications with the spirit crow?
I don't know.
Well,
I
give
don't.
me a rough idea, will you?
A couple of years later, I really don't know. I can't say. Years later.
Okay. So we got onto this because we were talking about ITP. You had this blood disorder, right?
So, the practical.
Joe, you got to let me ask you a question, okay?
I'm sorry.
It's okay. You had this blood disorder when you were very young, is that right?
Yes.
Did it have any ongoing effects for you through your childhood?
Yes.
And what were those effects?
As a practical upshot of the whole thing, other than making me just a little bit weird and
Hold on. As a practical upshot of the whole thing.
The practical upshot of the whole thing, other than making me just a little weird and a lot more awkward, giving me something awkward to speak about.
I can't hear you.
The practical upshot of all this, other than making me just a little bit weirder and giving me some awkward things to talk about in public, is that the ITP left me and my mom very concerned that at any time something might go wrong and that it might recall. So I didn't get out much. I didn't run around and play much. I wasn't a very physical child. I spent a lot of my early life and early years and subsequent years actually.
I spent a lot of my life.
And early years and subsequent years actually. Very much in my head.
Okay. I mean, did you have any? You mentioned your mother was. You were concerned about this. Because it's a little like having a disease where you might be concerned about bleeding a lot, so that's why you didn't run around outside a lot.
Right.
Of
I was concerned that any major trauma or something could cause a recursion.
Okay. So your mom was concerned about that too, right?
Yes. Yes.
So, I mean, it sounds like she loved you.
Yeah.
No question about that?
No question about that. No.
Well, why did she get bashed around so much then?
I don't want to bash her around. I mean, she's a good person. She's not really an adult, you know. I mean, she's not very responsible or anything, but it's not for lack of trying. It's just she doesn't really know how to be an adult. She doesn't know how to. She doesn't really know how to handle kids or really be responsible or keep the bills paid or keep a steady job.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that she's a bad person or anything because she's not. She's frankly the only person who still writes me. You know?
Okay. Your mom's still writing you?
Yeah.
And where does she live these days?
These days she lives somewhere in Portland, Oregon.
Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we, in the chronological progression, we were somewhere around your early teen years. Is that right? And the Jehovah's Witnesses didn't work out. Is that right?
We've actually jumped from one place to, well, eventually, after the pink stucco place, we moved in with...
After what?
After the pink stucco place, we moved in with my Aunt Mary.
You moved in with your Aunt Mary?
My Aunt Mary and my two cousins.
Okay, let me hold on. Let me just stop you for a second because I'm trying to close up a few open parentheses. The Jehovah's Witnesses,
Yes.
you were with them for maybe a couple years,
Yes.
and you felt some sense of acceptance there.
Yes.
But then you talked to the elders, and there was something about, pardon the discussion, but something about masturbation that made it not work out?
He, to put it simply, it's like, okay, so can you come before me, do you come here before me with without any guilt? And I couldn't say that I didn't because of that. I didn't explain that that's what it was about. I just said, well, not really.
And so then?
And so then it's like, okay, well, kind of, don't call us, we'll call you. So
Don't call us, we'll call you?
that's not how he put it or anything, but
Well, how did he put it?
I don't recall how he put it.
Were you allowed to continue studying to be a lay minister with the Jehovah's Witnesses?
I might have been.
Well, did
I
you?
didn't.
Why not?
Because I felt that I had failed and that I had been rejected by God at that point, actually.
Well, did you talk to anybody about it?
No.
Is that something you could have maybe talked to your mom about?
No.
No? You mentioned a minute ago that from the pink stucco place you moved in with your Aunt Mary.
Just a quick note. Back to one not being really an adult. Back to my mom not being really an adult.
Okay.
It's not like I could go to most of my problems. She's going to me with small problems.
Even when you were 13?
Yeah.
Well, what kind of problems would she come to you with?
Yeah, usually problems with the guys that she was with.
Usually problems with the guys
that she was with. They were just these losers.
Losers?
Yeah, well, she was convinced that she couldn't get with any better because of me, actually.
How do you know that?
She told me.
When did she tell you that?
All the time.
What's that?
All the time.
When you were how old?
From very young on.
So you said she was with guys and they were losers?
Absolute losers.
Well, who do you remember from just let's keep it to the first roughly 13 years of your life until you moved in with Aunt Mary. What guys do you remember? We heard about Bob in Loveland, Colorado, who turned out not to be a great guy.
He was one of the winners. He was one of the better ones. Okay?
Hold on, Joe. He was one of the what?
He was one of the better ones.
Tell us about others that you remember.
Most of the other ones won't be able to hold a job. Most of the other ones won't be able to go off and, these losers who would get out of jail. They would get out of jail, crash on the couch, drink and smoke, and eventually go and find some new, party to run in with. Apparently this is a common con I found since coming here.
It's a common con you found since coming here?
Yeah.
I think you better unpack that and tell us what you mean.
I was about to.
Thank you.
Is that you'll have somebody that'll getting out of jail and they'll get on like a mailing list or whatever, and they'll meet some gal who's a little older, who's got a couple of kids, and so might be feeling kind of desperate, and they'll kind of use that as a home base, to go off and like get some money for whatever reason, and to have a place to go when they get out until they go and hustle up something better. So, and because they've got kids, that means that they'll have food stamps, and so they'll be able to go off and like buy beer and cigarettes and whatever.
I don't think you can buy beer and cigarettes with food stamps.
You can't ever buy stuff that gives change off of food stamps. Well, maybe not anymore, but you used to be able to go. You used to be paid for food stamps. You would go, say, take $1, buy like a 25-cent candy, you get 75 cents in change. And then you use that 75 cents however you want. It's enough to go out and get yourself a can of King Cobra.
It's enough to
Get yourself a can of King Cobra.
What's King Cobra?
It's this terrible beer. It's a beer about this big.
Okay. So, now let me ask you. You said these guys would come and drink and smoke and stuff. Was your mom doing that stuff too? Was she into drugs or alcohol?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
And no, I can't even think of any time where she actually drank. We get wine for cooking, but she never drank it.
Okay.
So.
I asked you if you remembered any of these guys, these specific losers. Well, let me just go back for a second, because you said this is a con that you learned about since you've been in jail.
Yeah, not that I've went around and asked people, hey, have you ordered this? Or hey, have you ordered... No, I hear people occasionally sitting back and talking about lining up, stuff like that for when they get out. So,
Other inmates you're talking to here?
not that I was talking to, but who would talk and I would hear them. Overheard conversations.
Overheard conversations?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll get to what it's like in jail in a little bit, okay?
Okay.
Any other guys, do you remember the names of any specific guys or any characteristics of any specific guys you remember from being with your mom up until your early teen years?
Well, I think one of the ones who best kind of epitomizes the view of the kind of guys that Mom would get together with was this guy named Norman, right?
Hold on, keep your voice up, Joe.
Okay.
Guys that epitomize...
Who kind of epitomized the sort of people that she would get together with was this guy named Norman.
Norman?
Yeah. I don't know his last name. He got bit on the head as a dog. So
He what?
got bit on the head
By whom?
by a dog
By
as a
dog.
kid.
As a kid.
Okay.
By a dog.
I said he got bit on the head as a dog, didn't I? Sorry. He got bit on the head as a kid by a dog, and it had left him a little loopy, and his one ear didn't grow right and whatnot, and he was prone
His
to
1 ear what?
didn't grow right, and he was prone to fits of irrational anger.
So how did those fits of irrational anger manifest themselves?
I must remember him because he was the first guy who tried to feed me shaving cream. Yeah,
Tried to feed you shaving cream?
yeah, it boned. So, just,
Yes, what?
yes, it boned. Just grab it and just spray it in the mouth and, sit there with that for a couple of minutes.
Okay, so Norman, you remember Norman was
There was a couple of losers, but they don't really stand out to me right now. Sorry.
Let me ask you about your other two siblings. You mentioned Chris. Who are your other siblings?
My little siblings, around the time that I was 11, Mom had, she was working at Baker Square.
Baker Square.
Yeah. It's a restaurant in California. She would occasionally have jobs. Usually they would be these little dead-end jobs. Usually at restaurants and stuff. So she was working there and she met, I guess this guy was the cook there. And she'd had a relationship with this guy named Ken. He was another guy who was really pretty cool, actually.
Ken was a guy who was pretty cool.
Yeah.
What do you remember about Ken?
I met him all once. We visited his mother's place. He lived in a relatively rural area. There was a house around. He was tall, blonde, kind of the 50s All-American, if that makes sense to you.
Okay.
He didn't last long. So, usually she would go for the guys who like the total losers and keep them around. Then there was John Jones, most original name ever, and
I didn't hear you, John Jones.
yeah, the most original name ever.
Joe, before we get into John Jones, I asked you your siblings. Who are your other two siblings?
Ian and Sarah.
And when was Ian born?
Ian was born. Ken was his dad.
Ken was his dad?
Yeah.
The tall guy?
Yeah,
Okay.
which is what the lead into this was.
Which is?
The lead into this. So.
Okay. And that was the lead into this?
Yeah.
And who is Sarah's dad?
John Jones.
John Jones is Sarah's dad.
Yeah.
Let's talk about John Jones. How did you meet him, or how did your mom meet him? What's his story?
You know those guys who stand on the side of the highway with a "We'll Open Food" sign?
Right?
That's John.
That's John.
That's John.
Okay.
He had our apartment manager at this time.
He had it.
Our apartment manager at this time.
Apartment manager?
Yeah, we've skipped around a little bit again.
Okay.
So we're no longer at the Pink Stucco Apartments. We're at the.
East Apartments?
We are no longer at the Pink Stucco Apartments. We are now at the apartments that we're at the Homestead Garden Apartments at this point.
Homestead Garden Apartments.
Yeah,
And is this where your Aunt Mary lived?
this is where Aunt Mary lived. We
In
entered
what
it-
town?
Santa Clara as well.
Also Santa Clara.
Yes.
And the apartment manager you mentioned?
The apartment manager was Kathy Cote.
Kathy Cote. How do you spell Cote?
C-O-T-E.
C-O-T-E?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a little carrot over the. Oh,
He's
never
a
mind.
little.
No. I was just saying, there's a little carrot over the yolk.
What do you remember about your mom meeting John Jones, and just tell us about what the situation, the living situation was like there at the Homestead Garden
Okay.
Apartments.
So, Kathy, or maybe her husband, had seen John out there on this, holding up signs like, okay, well, if you're looking for food, then I've got a job for you.
So they took him up on his offer. We'll work for
Yeah.
food. Let's give you a job.
It's like, okay then, I've got a job. So they took him on as maintenance guy, and somehow or another he got introduced to my mom and moved in eventually, within a month,
Now,
I guess.
had Ian been born at this time?
Yeah, Ian was still living in the, was still, really small, still sleeping in a bassinet.
Okay. And you, I'm sorry, again, how old were you when Ian was born, or how much older than Ian are you?
I think about 13 years.
You think you're about 13 years older than Ian?
No, I am 10 years older than Ian.
10 years older than Ian. So he was born in roughly 1988, 1989, somewhere in there?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. How about Sarah? What's the age difference there?
She's a year younger than Ian.
A year younger than Ian.
Yes.
So she's born roughly 1990.
Right.
Okay.
Something like that, yeah.
Tell us about John Jones. You're in the Homestead Garden Apartments, and what else was going on in your life? What happened there?
At that particular point, we were living in a one-bedroom apartment. Me and Chris shared a room, and Mom had kind of put...
Who shared a room?
Chris and I shared a room, and there was a division in the living room separating Mom's room, and Ian slept in this little bassinet, and the rest of the living room.
What kind of a division?
She had her dresser with its, it had a high back mirror on it, and kind of a rug or a tapestry that would make up the other side. So,
Okay.
kind of a doorway there.
All right.
So,
And you were living in the Homestead Garden Apartments. Let me ask you, did you just live in one apartment at the Homestead Garden Apartments, or did you live in more than one?
we lived in quite a few apartments now. Maybe, I don't think quite 10, maybe more like 6 to 10 somewhere.
You lived in 6 to 10 different apartments at the Homestead Garden Apartments?
Yeah.
All in this same time span, roughly when...
Well, no. We would usually hang out. Sometimes we would move from one apartment to another. Other times we would move from one apartment to somewhere else, and then we come back to a third apartment, and then so.
Why?
My mom wasn't very good at paying bills, and
Your mom wasn't very good at...
paying bills,
Okay,
including
so-
rent.
So how is it, though, that you managed to not pay the bills and then move around to the different apartments within this complex?
Kathy really was a great friend to her, really looked out for him. It's like, she didn't want us out on this. I'm really kind of thinking she didn't want us out on the street or whatever. So it would be one of those things where, okay, well, maybe we went to a new one. I'm not...
Kathy Cote was the apartment manager?
Yeah.
And you just said that she didn't want you out on the street?
That's just an assumption on my part. I don't know the specifics. I really don't.
But you'd not pay the bills at one place and then you'd get moved into another place?
Yeah.
Is that how it worked?
Pretty much.
So you didn't have to go out and live on the street?
Right. We had never actually, we managed to always, though scraping by, we never actually ended up living on the street. We never ended up living in tents or anything.
Let me ask you this. The CPS photos that we saw in the first part of the trial, what apartment complex were those from?
That's from the Homestead Garden Apartments.
Homestead Garden Apartments.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you live at Homestead Garden all in one stretch, or did you move away somewhere else for a while?
Oh, no, there were times where we would move. We would move out, and then we would move back, and then we'd move out, move back.
Move out of Homestead into a different complex, and then come back?
I wouldn't say a different complex, usually a different state.
A different state.
Yeah.
Okay.
For example, Arizona.
Let's talk about Arizona. How did you get to Arizona, and what were the circumstances?
I got to Arizona because of, this goes back to John Jones. He had decided that, keep in mind at this point, him and Mom were sharing a room with Ian, which is actually a subdivision of the living room. Okay? And he's like, and of course he's got Mom pregnant again, and he's like, okay, well, I think it's time to go off and get real life and a real house going for you people, right?
Well, that all sounds good.
Yeah, So he's like, okay, me and my friend and Joe, we're all going to go and set this up.
Wait a second. Me and my friend and Joe, this is John Jones talking here?
Yeah.
Who's his friend?
Brian. I don't know his last name, just Brian.
Brian, a grown-up?
Yeah.
And Joe, was that you?
Yeah.
So you were how old at this time?
11.
And you were going to set up what?
We were going to let's go north and to Lake Tahoe, where we knew this guy. Well, there was a friend of his named Wade.
Hold on a second. You were in Santa Clara?
Yeah.
And you were going to go to Lake Tahoe?
Yeah.
I think that's east.
No, it's north.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Lake Tahoe has snow. Yeah.
Anyway.
Santa Clara doesn't. Anyway, so we went up. What we were going to do is visit Wade, hang out there for maybe a week, and then we were going to go down to Vegas or Arizona or something and see what we could, set up for as far as getting a place,
Well, let me ask you this. You're 11 years old at the time. With all due respect, what were you going to do in helping set up the place with these adults?
I think the whole point was to make sure that they didn't just keep going.
The whole point was to what?
Make sure that they didn't just keep going and not come back.
Well, how were you going to do anything about that?
Kind of a hook. Kind of an anchor, really.
An anchor?
Yeah.
I'm tell me exactly what you mean by that. How are you an anchor that's going to make sure they don't keep going?
So that as long as they've got me around, then they've got some ways to go and they've got some link with Mom, so that there's some reason for them to reconnect with Mom. If no.
So whose idea was it that you go along as an anchor?
Actually, I think that was Mom's.
Like as an insurance policy?
Yeah, exactly.
Like take my 11-year-old to make sure you come back?
Yeah.
Okay. So, first you moved to Tahoe.
Yeah, we ended up actually staying there about a month or two.
Now, was your mom married to John Jones at some point?
Yes. She was married. I think she was married about the time that they realized that she was pregnant with Sarah. And so then, which was, of course, before we went on this thing. So he's like, okay, this is my wife, and she's carrying my daughter, and so I might as well go and, actually, they thought it was a Sunday Fourth. So it's time to grow up and get a real place and yada, yada, yada. And so this.
So from Tahoe, where did you go?
We went to Vegas, actually.
And how long were you in Vegas?
We were there for about a week, and we ended up leaving in the middle of the night. This is you and Brian and John? Me and Brian and John, yeah. They had kind of, my understanding is they kind of pimped themselves out.
They kind of pimped themselves out?
Yeah, and kind of grabbed the money left the gal tied up and grabbed the money and ran. And it's like, okay, we need to get out of Vegas now.
Well, let me ask you this. Were you there for any of that? Did you
No,
witness any of that?
No.
Where were
I
you?
was back at our hotel watching TV.
Did you, so I guess they told you what
Yes.
happened?
Yeah.
But you have no idea what really happened, is that right?
Well, no. I never met these people, so,
Okay, so from Vegas, where you left in the middle of the night, where'd you go?
We went down to Tucson, and we, going back to Walk for Food, somebody eventually took them up on that with them cutting trees.
So they got a job cutting trees?
Yeah. And so that worked out pretty well, and this particular person had a camper trailer that they weren't using, so they let us live in that. After about a month or two, they decided, okay, we're going to go back and get everybody else now. So they did.
Everybody else meaning your mom?
Mom and the other 3 kids. 2 kids. No, 3 kids. Yeah. No, 2 kids because Sarah wasn't born yet.
2 kids, because Sarah wasn't born yet.
Yeah.
And shouldn't you have been in school at this point?
Probably.
Okay, but you weren't.
No.
Right? And so, did you go back to California to get the rest of your family?
No, they did. I stayed there.
Who did you stay with?
There's tree people.
The people who cut trees?
Yeah.
And how long were you down there before your mom came down with the rest of the family?
month or two.
A month
A
or
month
two?
or two, yeah.
Okay. And then did your mom eventually come down?
So when they came down, we ended up all getting together and moving to a different place in a little backwater town in the middle of nowhere called Sahuarita.
Sahuarita?
Yeah. Sahuarita.
Do you know where that is? Is that Arizona still?
Yeah, that's Arizona.
Okay.
It's out in the deserts.
A lot of
No.
Arizona's like that.
Strangely enough.
What were you doing? And so everybody moved to this place in Sahuarita?
Mhm.
And what was it like there?
A desert? It was nice, actually. It was really nice. There wasn't much going on. And, mostly it was just really hot. It was so hot that we would actually have, during the evening, we would look out at the windows and they would be covered with scorpions and lizards who would climb up on the windows and inside of the doors and stuff on the screens, because it would be cooler inside. The cooler would come out and give them a little breeze.
So Joe, what was John Jones working like? What was the means of income at this place that you lived at?
I have no idea.
Did you ever live on a marijuana farm, Joe?
This was a marijuana farm, yes.
Okay.
But I don't know if they were
That's what I
actually
was
selling any of the marijuana.
Hold on, but I
Sorry.
don't know.
But I don't know if they were actually selling any of the marijuana, so I don't know if they were making any money from that.
To your knowledge, were they growing marijuana?
Oh, yeah.
Had that been legalized in Arizona at that time?
Well, no.
Okay. Tell me what you know. I mean, what exactly was it? Are we talking about 50-acre fields, or
Oh, God, no.
what are we
No, it
talking
was...
about?
I think it was really just that these guys were growing for themselves and maybe a couple friends. You know, nothing wrong with that. And they had maybe 7 to 10 plants in the middle of a garden that had a top over it. And, they're just good for their own recreational use. And the people who lived there, they had jobs. The various people who lived out there all had jobs. The gal who was, I guess she was the grandmother, she was a hairdresser at a truck stop. Her daughter, I don't know what the daughter did, but the daughter's husband did something, and the gal's husband did something too. I don't know what. I'm guessing John did something as well, but I don't know what.
Okay. And so at this point, it's you and your brother Chris, right, living there?
Yeah.
Any other kids? Did you play? Did you have friends? Did you go to school? What did you do?
At that point, we also had Ian, by the way, but he was still very, very young.
I didn't hear you at that point.
At that point, we also had Ian, by the way, but he was still very, very young and not, I still mostly I went out exploring because we were in the middle of the desert and there was the one cool thing about it is that there wasn't much out there, right? So I would go out there and just, just wander around and just take in all the interesting natural stuff, lizards and whatnot.
Okay, Joe.
Yeah.
Did you have friends? What were the kids around? What was the environment like?
There were a couple of kids, Jennifer and Holly. Jennifer was she was 10, I'd say, and Holly was about 8. So.
Did you get along with your brother Chris? What was your relationship like with him?
It was. It depended. Sometimes it was good, sometimes it was really not good. Eventually, when we had left that place, this is after John just disappeared one day, we ended up in a trailer park, and Chris had a dog, and he let his dog, I can't remember if it would go to the bathroom all over my stuff, right? Ruining my comic books. One of my escapes was comic books. And I was really upset about that, and I complained to Mom, and Mom's like, okay, well, he's grounded then, right? And then she goes off to work or something and leaves us for a couple hours. Chris, of course, sneaks out, gets all the kids in the neighborhood together, and says that I've been going and like calling them racial insults. And the absurdity of it is, some of the people that he was saying that I was going and calling, you know, racial insults to, I didn't even know they weren't white. You know, these were the one that actually has stuck with me through all these years is there was this one boy and his sister. I really liked them. You know, I thought they were cool as hell, right? I mean, this guy was, you know, I thought he was really awesome. I thought his sister was, you know, beautiful and brilliant and awesome. And, you know, so he's got, but I had no idea that she was Latina, right? Now the reason this matters is because later on and all these other neighborhood kids came down and started going and laying siege to the trail, literally siege to the trail, literally rocking it on the foundations, hammering on the windows, trying to get in, screaming that they were going to kill me, they were going to beat the crap out of me, and screaming racial epithets back at me. And I'm like, well, I didn't do any of this. And of course that one particular gal, she's like, I might be, I'm not going to say it, but at least I'm not white trash. I'm like, I'm saying you're thinking you're not white? I didn't even realize. But, so we get like that sometimes.
So I asked you...
Can you hold on? I need to switch. Can you take a